The Arab executive's African daughter was silent until she drank a mysterious juice and a miracle happened. From the glittering towers of Dubai to the quiet corners of his own home, Malik Al-Rashid had everything a man could dream of: wealth, power, respect. Yet none of it mattered when he looked at his daughter, Amina. Born in Africa and adopted into his world of opulence, she had never spoken a word. Doctors had called it permanent. Specialists said there was no hope. Malik carried the weight of that silence every single day, knowing that all his billions could not buy his daughter's voice. But then, on a fateful evening, everything changed. Amina drank from a glass of juice brought in by a stranger, and what followed defied every explanation. What happened next would not only shock Malik, but challenge everything he believed about fate, miracles, and the price of love. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. This helps us bring more powerful and inspiring stories straight to you. Because what unfolds in this story is more than wealth, more than power. It's a lesson about courage, resilience, and the miracles that come when you least expect them. Malik Al-Rashid had spent his life conquering boardrooms, silencing rivals, and building an empire that stretched from Dubai to London, Paris, and New York. His name was synonymous with ambition, power, and wealth. Yet in the stillness of his palatial home overlooking the Arabian Gulf, all of it seemed empty compared to the silence of his daughter, Amina. She was 10 years old, with large brown eyes that seemed to speak entire volumes, though her lips never formed words. Born in a small village in Senegal, she had been adopted by Malik after her mother, a woman Malik once loved but had lost to illness, passed away. He had promised to give Amina the world, and he did. The best tutors, doctors, schools, and toys money could buy. But the one thing he longed for, the sound of her voice calling him Baba, had never come. Doctors in Europe and America had offered their assessments. Her condition was irreversible, a neurological block. Some hinted at trauma. Others blamed genetics. No one gave Malik hope. But Malik refused to stop searching. He had poured millions into treatments, flown her across continents, and stood by her side through tests and failures. And every time he would hold her hand, smile for her sake, and whisper, "One day, Amina. One day you'll speak." Despite her silence, their bond was deep. She drew with vibrant colors that filled entire canvases, each picture reflecting the world she longed to describe. Malik kept her paintings framed throughout the mansion. They were her language, a secret only father and daughter shared. And though she never spoke, her laughter, expressed through wide smiles and shining eyes, was enough to melt the hardest corners of Malik's heart. But in the business world, whispers followed him. The mighty executive with the mute daughter, some said behind closed doors. Malik heard the pity in their voices, the unspoken judgment. And though he never showed it, it pierced him deeper than any corporate betrayal. It was during one of his philanthropic visits to Africa that something extraordinary occurred. Malik had funded a new water purification plant in a rural region of Tanzania. He traveled there with Amina by his side, her small hand gripping his as they stepped onto the dusty ground of the village. Children gathered, fascinated by her beautiful dresses and her quiet demeanor. The village chief, an elder with wise, weathered eyes, welcomed them with traditional songs and offerings. Among the gifts was a small clay jug of juice, dark, almost crimson, with a faint herbal scent. The chief explained through a translator, "This is from our baobab grove, mixed with roots passed down through generations. It is sacred here. It heals." Malik accepted it politely, as he always did with ceremonial gifts. He didn't believe in such things. He believed in science, in strategy, in the tangible world of deals and contracts. But Amina's eyes lit up at the jug. She tugged at his sleeve, pointing insistently. "You want to try it?" Malik asked gently, though he knew she couldn't answer with words. She nodded, her curls bouncing, her gaze fixed. That evening, as the sun bled into the horizon and drums echoed through the air, Malik poured her a glass of the juice. Its scent was sweet yet earthy, unlike anything he'd encountered in his world of crystal chalices and fine wines. He hesitated, but Amina reached out with both hands, eager. He handed her the cup and she drank. slowly at first, then in long gulps, as though her body had been craving it without knowing. When she finished, she smiled, the wide, glowing smile that always broke him. Malik ruffled her hair and kissed her forehead. "You like it, hm?" Later that night, as they rested in the guest house, Malik watched her fall asleep. He lay awake, listening to the hum of the night, his mind swirling with business plans and fatherly worries. Until it happened. A small sound cut through the silence. At first, he thought it was the wind. But then it came again. A broken, trembling syllable. Baba." Malik sat up instantly, his heart slamming against his ribs. He turned to Amina, who sat up in bed, her eyes wide, lips quivering. Tears streamed down her cheeks as another sound escaped. "Baba." For a moment, Malik couldn't breathe. The word he had dreamed of, prayed for, fought for, was now real. His little girl had spoken. After 10 years of silence, her voice, fragile and uncertain, had filled the air. He gathered her into his arms, holding her tight as tears ran down his own face. "Amin, my daughter, you spoke. You spoke." She clung to him, crying, her voice breaking with effort but unmistakably there. "Baba." The world outside continued as if nothing had happened. The drums, the laughter, the night insects singing. But inside that small guest house, a miracle had unfolded. Malik's empire, his power, his billions, none of it mattered in that moment. The only treasure he wanted was the sound of his daughter's voice. Yet even as joy overwhelmed him, a shadow of doubt crept in. What had caused this? The juice? The place? Something divine? Or something dangerous? Because as he held Amina and whispered promises of a new life filled with her voice, he knew one thing for certain: nothing would ever be the same again. And deep down he wondered, had he just witnessed a miracle, or had he unleashed something he didn't yet understand? Malik al-Rashid barely slept that night. Every time his eyes closed, he heard it again. Her voice, fragile but real, sang the word he had dreamed of for a decade: Baba. By dawn, Amina was still asleep, her breathing steady, her small hand curled in his. Malik sat beside her, watching in awe, afraid that if he looked away, the miracle would disappear like a dream. When she stirred awake, her eyes blinked open slowly. She looked at him, lips parting, and though her voice was shaky, she spoke again. "Baba." The word cut through him like sunlight breaking into a dark room. Tears stung his eyes, and he smiled so wide it almost hurt. "Yes, my love. I'm here." She laughed, not silently, not with only her smile, but with a soft sound that filled the room like music. Malik's chest ached with joy. For years, he had carried the weight of her silence, the judgment of others, the whispered pity in boardrooms and palaces. But now, here was his daughter, finally breaking the silence that had defined her life. Yet Malik was no fool. He knew what miracles did. They attracted attention. And attention in his world always came with a price. By mid-morning, the village had already heard. Word spread fast. The girl who had never spoken was now calling for her father. Elders whispered about the sacred juice. Children peeked through the windows of the guest house, curious to hear her speak. The chief visited, bowing respectfully. "It is the baobab spirit," he said through the translator. "The roots heal what nothing else can. It is a blessing." Malik thanked him politely, but inside he wrestled with doubt. Could it really be so simple? A drink made from roots and fruit? Or was it coincidence, timing, fate? Still, he couldn't ignore the results. Amina was speaking, not fluently, not yet, but enough. Words came haltingly, her voice cracking with effort, but each syllable was a victory. Later, when they boarded the jet back to Dubai, Malik couldn't stop staring at her. She sat by the window, clutching one of her sketchbooks, humming softly under her breath. Humming. That sound alone made Malik's chest tighten with gratitude. But his gratitude quickly turned into determination. If the juice had unlocked her voice, then he had to know how. He had to understand it. Not just for her, but for the countless children around the world who lived in silence. By the time they landed, Malik had already made arrangements. He flew in doctors from London and New York, specialists who had spent years studying Amina's condition. He demanded they test her again. The doctors were astonished. There is no medical explanation, one of them admitted after hours of scans and examinations. Her vocal cords are healthy, her brain scans show no sudden change. This shouldn't be possible. But it is, Malik said firmly, his hand resting on Amina's shoulder as she sat on the exam table. The doctors exchanged uneasy glances. Perhaps it was psychological, another suggested. A trigger that finally released her voice. Trauma works in strange ways. Malik didn't argue. He had heard enough theories before. What mattered wasn't their explanations. What mattered was that Amina could speak. That evening he gathered his most trusted advisors at his mansion. Around the long marble table sat men and women who had guided him through billion-dollar deals, oil contracts, and investments across the globe. But tonight, they weren't here to talk business. They were here because Malik had something new, something personal. He told them about the village, about the juice, about the miracle. "You're saying a drink from some rural tribe cured your daughter?" one advisor asked skeptically. "I am saying she speaks now," Malik replied sharply. "And I want to know why." Some leaned forward, intrigued. Others exchanged doubtful looks. Another advisor finally spoke. "If this is true and if it can be replicated, do you understand what this means? The entire medical world would turn upside down. Pharmaceutical companies would pay billions. Nations would fight to control it." Malik's jaw tightened. That was exactly what worried him. He had lived long enough to know that miracles, once exposed, turned into commodities. And commodities turned into wars. "I don't want to sell it," Malik said firmly. "I don't want to exploit it. I only care about Amina. And maybe other children like her." But even as he spoke, he saw the hunger in their eyes. The boardroom sharks who had helped him build his empire were already calculating. Already imagining profits, power, control. That night, when the mansion was quiet, Malik stood by Amina's room. She was asleep again, her lips parted slightly, her breathing soft. He listened, praying to hear another sound, another word. But all he heard was silence. Fear crept in. What if it had been temporary? What if the miracle faded as quickly as it came? The next morning, Amina spoke again, proving his fears wrong. She whispered, "Good morning," in her broken, fragile voice, and Malik's knees nearly gave out with relief. But the relief didn't last long. Because by afternoon, the media had caught wind of it. Somehow, word had leaked from the doctors, or perhaps the advisors. Headlines flashed. "Billionaire's mute daughter speaks after mysterious trip to Africa." Cameras gathered outside the gates of his mansion. Journalists shouted questions. "Mr. Al-Rashid, is it true? What happened to your daughter?" Malik shielded Amina from the frenzy, but inside, his anger boiled. This was supposed to be their miracle, their secret. And now, the world wanted to turn it into a spectacle. That night, he sat alone in his study, staring at the framed photo of Amina's late mother. He whispered, "What have I done? Did I save her, or put her in danger?" Because deep down, Malik knew the truth. If the world believed Amina's voice came from that mysterious juice, then powerful men would stop at nothing to take it and hurt away. The cameras outside Malik Al-Rashid's mansion did not disappear overnight. In fact, every day they seemed to multiply. News vans lined the boulevard, reporters shouted questions at the iron gates, and photographers raised long lenses toward the tall windows of his estate. For years, Malik had been accustomed to the spotlight of the business world. Articles about his net worth, interviews about his investments, rumors about his rivals. But this was different. This was personal. And Amina was at the center of it. She peeked through the curtains of her bedroom one morning, her small voice breaking the silence. "Baba, who are they?" The sound of her words still made Malik's heart swell with gratitude, but hearing them laced with fear stung him. "They're just curious, Habibti," he said softly, kneeling beside her. "They want to know your story." Her lips trembled. "Do I have to talk to them?" Malik shook his head firmly. "No. You only speak when you want to. Not for them, only for yourself." But the world was not willing to leave her alone. Malik's phone rang constantly with calls from journalists, television producers, even government officials. Pharmaceutical companies offered meetings. Research institutions begged for samples of the mysterious juice. Each time, Malik refused. Still, curiosity grew. Some hailed Amina's voice as a miracle. Others dismissed it as a hoax. Conspiracy theories spread online. The billionaire staged it for publicity. It's an experimental drug hidden under the cover of tradition. The girl was never mute at all. Malik slammed his laptop shut one night after scrolling through the accusations. Rage burned in his chest. He had lived through ruthless corporate betrayals, but nothing compared to seeing strangers attack the dignity of his daughter. And then came the knock at his office door. It was his chief advisor, Kareem, a man who had been by his side for 2 decades. His hair was grayer now, but his eyes still carried the same sharp calculation that had helped Malik secure half his empire. "They won't stop," Kareem said, setting a newspaper on the desk. The headline screamed, "Billionaire hides secret cure?" "I don't care what they print," Malik muttered. "I care only about Amina." Kareem leaned forward. "That's exactly why you should act. If what the villagers gave her can be analyzed, synthesized, replicated, think of what it could mean. Not just for the world, but for her. If the effect fades, she might lose her voice again. Don't you want to make sure it lasts?" Malik stiffened. He hated how Kareem's words wormed into the fear he already carried. What if it did fade? What if her miracle slipped through his fingers because he clung too tightly to secrecy? Still, he shook his head. "Not yet. She is not an experiment. She is my daughter." Kareem sighed but said nothing more. That night, Malik tucked Amina into bed. She clutched her sketchbook close, whispering, "Don't let them take it away, Baba." He frowned. "Take what away?" "My voice." The words shattered him. He kissed her forehead, promising, "No one will take it. Not while I'm here." But promises were fragile things. 2 days later, an invitation arrived, though in Malik's world, it felt more like a summons. The Royal Council of Health in Riyadh wanted to meet with him. The letter was polite, draped in official seals, but the message was clear. The kingdom demanded answers. He considered ignoring it. But ignoring the council was dangerous. Their reach extended far beyond medicine. So he flew to Riyadh, leaving Amina under the careful watch of trusted staff. The council's chamber was grand, lined with men in immaculate robes and women in tailored suits. At the center sat the Minister of Health, his hands folded. "Mr. Al-Rashid," the minister began, "we congratulate you on your daughter's progress. Truly, it is extraordinary. But such a miracle must be shared. If this substance has medical value, it belongs to the world, not hidden away in one man's home." Malik's voice was steady, but his chest burned. "With respect, my daughter is not your experiment. What happened to her is sacred. I will not hand her over like some bargaining chip." A murmur rippled through the chamber. The minister's gaze hardened. "We are not asking for her. We are asking for the truth. If you deny us, others will come for it anyway. And you may not be able to protect her forever." The words echoed long after the meeting ended. Back in Dubai, Malik returned to his daughter's laughter, her fragile voice humming songs she had never been able to before. But the minister's warning haunted him. He saw the cameras at the gates not just as annoyances now, but as threats. He heard every click of a shutter as danger. That night, he stood on the balcony, the city glittering beneath him, the sea stretching out endlessly. Kareem joined him quietly. "You can't keep this contained," Kareem said. "Sooner or later, someone will try to take it by force." Malik's hand gripped the railing. "Let them try. I've fought empires before. They won't touch her." But even as he spoke, his stomach twisted. Because deep down, he knew this was not like any empire he had fought. This was his daughter's life, her miracle, and the world would stop at nothing to claim it. And as if to prove his fear right, the next morning came with another blow. Amina's tutor rushed into his office, pale and trembling. "Sir," she tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. Malik's blood ran cold. He bolted upstairs to find Amina in tears, clutching her throat, her voice struggling to form the simple word she had once spoken so clearly, "Baba." Malik had faced hostile takeovers, courtroom battles, and billion-dollar negotiations that dragged on for months. But nothing struck fear into him like the sight of Amina clutching her throat, her eyes wide with panic as no sound came out. "Baba," she tried again, her lips forming the word but no voice following. Her small hands shook as tears streamed down her cheeks. He dropped to his knees beside her, holding her close. "It's okay, Habibti. Don't force it. I'm here." But his own voice trembled. For hours, he sat with her, coaxing gently, hoping it was only fatigue, a passing moment. Sometimes a whisper came, cracked and broken. Sometimes nothing at all. By evening, she was exhausted, asleep against his chest. Malik carried her to bed, but sleep would not come for him. He paced his study, the weight of the world pressing down harder than ever. The miracle that had lifted them both now dangled on the edge of vanishing. Kareem entered quietly, his tone careful. "If the effect is fading, we need to act before it's gone." Malik turned sharply. "She's not a science project." "She is your daughter," Kareem countered, "and that's exactly why you must secure what gave her the voice. The village. The juice. If we can reproduce it, maybe we can preserve her gift." Malik slammed his fist on the desk. "And what happens when the world finds out? They'll strip that village bare. They'll turn it into another battlefield for greed. I will not let Amina's miracle be twisted into someone else's fortune." Kareem fell silent, but the words lingered. The next day, Malik flew Amina's doctors back in. They ran tests, asked her to speak, encouraged her with pictures and songs. Sometimes a faint word slipped out, "Yes, no, Baba." Other times her voice failed completely. The head neurologist finally sighed. "Mr. Al-Rashid, it is possible her vocal pathways were temporarily unlocked, but without consistent treatment, they may regress. Whatever triggered it must be studied further." Malik dismissed them, frustration boiling inside. Science offered no certainty. Faith offered no answers. He was trapped in the middle, watching his daughter's fragile voice slip like sand through his fingers. That night, while Amina slept, Malik stood once again on the balcony overlooking the glittering lights of Dubai. He thought of the villagers, of the clay jug, of the juice's strange crimson color. His empire had taught him one rule above all: nothing this powerful remained hidden for long. If the council, the corporations, or the media got their hands on it, they would devour it. A knock broke his thoughts. It was Kareem again. "There's something you need to see." He led Malik into the screening room, where a news report was playing. On the screen, a reporter stood in the same Tanzanian village Malik had visited. Rumors spread that a local tribe possesses a sacred drink capable of miraculous healing. Sources claim billionaire Malik Al-Rashid's daughter regained her voice here. Already, pharmaceutical representatives are offering millions for access. The camera cut to villagers surrounded by strangers in suits, flashing money, snapping photos, collecting samples. Malik's stomach twisted. "They found it," Kareem said grimly. "And they won't stop." Malik's mind raced. The world wasn't just knocking at his door anymore. It was storming the gates. And if the cure was exploited, the purity of what had healed his daughter would be lost forever. But the cruelest thought of all was this: if the juice really was the source, then denying the world might mean condemning Amina to silence once again. The following morning, Malik found Amina in the garden, sketching quietly. Her voice was faint, but she managed a soft, "Good morning." It pierced him, not with joy, but with desperation. Every syllable was slipping further away. He knelt beside her. "Amina, would you want me to find more of the juice?" She looked at him, her eyes deep and knowing. Then she whispered, almost inaudible, "Only if it's safe." Her words crushed him. Even as a child, she understood what he feared most, that her miracle could cost others dearly. Later that day, Malik gathered his advisors once more. "I will go back to the village myself. No one else. No corporations. No governments. I need to know if this can help her, and if it can be protected." Kareem frowned. "That's dangerous. The vultures are already there." "All the more reason," Malik said. His tone left no room for argument. That night, as he prepared for the journey, he tucked Amina into bed. She reached for his hand, her small voice barely a whisper. "Come back, Baba." His throat tightened. "Always." When the jet lifted off under the cover of darkness, Malik stared out at the desert below, determination hardening in his chest. He wasn't flying as a billionaire, or as a mogul, or as a man of power. He was flying as a father, ready to face anyone who dared threaten his daughter's fragile miracle. But what awaited him in Africa was not just answers. It was a storm of greed, betrayal, and danger that would test every ounce of courage he had left. Because by the time Malik set foot in that village again, the fight for Amina's voice had already begun. The village looked nothing like it had when Malik first visited. The dusty roads were now crowded with trucks and tents, men in crisp suits standing shoulder to shoulder with armed guards. Scientists huddled over equipment, extracting samples from baobab trees. Villagers shouted angrily, trying to push back, their traditions trampled beneath the weight of greed. Malik stepped out of his vehicle, his presence commanding even amid the chaos. Eyes turned instantly toward him. Cameras flashed. Reporters surged forward. "Mr. Al-Rashid, is it true your daughter's voice came from this place? Will you share the cure?" He ignored them all. His gaze was fixed on the elder, the same man who had once placed the clay jug in his hands. The elder's eyes were filled with sorrow. "They want to take everything," the man said softly, through the translator. "They say it is for the world, but we know the truth. They will strip the land and leave us with nothing." Malik's fists clenched. This wasn't about healing anymore. It was about ownership, profit, power. He had seen this story play out in boardrooms his entire life, but now it was wrapped around his daughter's miracle. That night, Malik sat by the fire with the elders. "Tell me," he asked, "what is this juice? What gives it such power?" The elder placed a hand on Malik's shoulder. "It is not just the tree. It is the soil, the roots, the prayer spoken when it is made. It is life given by generations. It is not meant to be sold. It is meant to be shared, with respect." Malik felt the truth in those words. He thought of Amina, of her fragile voice, of how it had begun to falter. He wanted to beg for more of the juice, to secure it, to keep her voice alive. But then he thought of her whisper back in Dubai, "Only if it's safe." The next morning, Malik stood before the corporations and the officials who had invaded the village. He raised his voice with the same authority that had silenced stock markets. "You came here looking for profit," he said. "You think you can bottle a miracle and sell it to the highest bidder. But this land, this tree, this tradition, it does not belong to you. It does not belong to me. It belongs to the people who have guarded it for centuries." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The officials shifted uneasily. A reporter called out, "Then what about your daughter? Did this not save her?" Malik paused. His throat tightened. "Yes. My daughter spoke because of this gift, and for that I will be forever grateful. But I will not destroy an entire culture to preserve what I love most. If her voice fades, then I will teach her that silence does not make her less. That her strength has never been in the words she speaks, but in the courage she shows." The village erupted in cheers. The corporate men scowled, some storming away, others already plotting. But Malik felt lighter, as if a burden had been lifted from his chest. When he returned to Dubai days later, Amina ran to him at the gate. Her voice cracked, faint but still there, "Baba." He dropped to his knees, embracing her tightly. "I'm here, Habibti. Always." She whispered, "Did you bring it back?" He kissed her forehead. "No. Because we don't need it to be who we are." Her eyes filled with tears, not of disappointment, but of understanding. She clung to him, her small arms wrapped tight around his neck. For the first time, Malik realized she didn't fear losing her voice. She feared losing him. That night, as they sat together in the garden, Amina spoke haltingly, each word a victory. "I love you, Baba." Malik's heart broke and healed all at once. "And I love you," he whispered, his eyes wet with tears. "With or without words, you are my miracle." The world outside still clamored for answers, still fought for control of the juice. But Malik no longer cared. He had chosen. He had protected what truly mattered. Because miracles are not meant to be bought or sold. They are meant to be lived, in the bond between a father and daughter, in the courage to accept what cannot be changed, in the love that endures beyond every silence. As Malik held Amina close, listening to the fragile sound of her laughter, he knew the truth. He had built an empire of stone and steel, but this small voice, this small girl, was the only empire that mattered. And in that moment, beneath the stars over Dubai, Malik al-Rashid felt richer than he had ever been. If this story touched your heart, remember, true wealth is not measured in power or possessions, but in the love we fight to protect. What would you risk to guard the people you love most? Backhand Index Pointing Right. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share this story with someone who needs a reminder that courage and compassion are worth more than any fortune.